The grand chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with lights from 1,000 worlds. Representatives from dozens of alien species stood in their designated sections, watching the historic moment unfold. The war was finally over. 30 years of fighting between the Velcrin Empire and the Terran Coalition had come to an end, not with a clear victor, but with exhaustion on both sides. Queen Velrisa stood tall on the main platform, her purple skin catching the light like polished amethyst. She was nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like molten gold. Her people, the Velcrin, were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. They valued strength above everything else, and she embodied that ideal perfectly. Today, she wore her ceremonial armor, each piece engraved with the names of battles she had won personally. Across from her stood Ambassador Hyanki, the lead negotiator for humanity. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him stood a small group of human diplomats, all wearing simple black suits. They looked almost plain compared to the exotic aliens filling the chamber. "The terms are acceptable," Velrisa said, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. She spoke in the common galactic language, but her accent made it sound like a song of war. "However, as discussed, there must be a bond between our peoples. A symbol that cannot be broken." Henki nodded slowly. "A marriage between our leaders?" "Yes, we understand. The Terran Coalition agrees to these terms." Velrisa's eyes swept over the human delegation. In her culture, marriage was a political tool, nothing more. She felt no shame in using it now. In fact, she saw it as another victory. The humans would provide one of their own to live among the Velcrin, a constant reminder of who had truly won this war. Even though the treaty called it a stalemate, Velrisa knew better. Her people were superior. This marriage would prove it. "Bring forward the candidates," she commanded. 5 human men stepped forward from the delegation. Hyanki had chosen them carefully. Each was educated, diplomatic, and willing to make this sacrifice for peace. Velrisa walked along the line, examining them with the same attention she would give to new weapons. She dismissed the first 3 almost immediately. They stood too straight, trying to appear strong. That annoyed her. The 4th man was tall and looked nervous. She could smell his fear. Weak. She moved on. Then she reached the 5th man. He was average height for a human, perhaps 5 feet 10 inches. His hair was dark and neat, and he wore glasses. Unlike the others, he did not try to stand at attention. He simply stood naturally, his hands clasped in front of him, looking directly at her without fear or challenge. His name was Tae-Sung. "This one," Velrisa said, pointing at him. "He will do." She chose him precisely because he looked harmless, non-threatening, easy to control. Among the candidates, he seemed the weakest, which meant he would cause her the least trouble. Perfect for a husband she never wanted in the first place. Tae-Sung bowed slightly. "I am honored, Your Majesty." His voice was calm and steady. No trembling, no excitement, just acceptance. Velrisa found that strange, but did not think much of it. Humans were strange creatures anyway. The wedding ceremony took place. 1 week later, on the neutral ground of the council station, it was a spectacle designed for the cameras and news feeds broadcasting to billions across the galaxy. Velrisa wore white armor decorated with blue crystals. Tae-Sung wore a simple, formal suit, black with a white shirt. They stood together while a council elder recited the words of bonding in 7 different languages. When it came time for the traditional vows, Velrisa spoke hers in her native tongue, loud and clear. She promised to honor the bond as long as peace lasted. It was the minimum required. Tae-Sung spoke his vows in the same Velcrin language, pronouncing each word perfectly. That surprised her. He had learned her language in just 1 week. Perhaps he was not completely useless. After the ceremony, they were escorted to a transport ship that would take them to the Velcrin homeworld. Inside the private cabin, Velrisa finally spoke to him directly for the first time. "You understand what this is?" she said, removing her ceremonial crown. "This marriage is political. Nothing more. You will have quarters in the palace. You will attend state functions when required. Beyond that, stay out of my way." Taesung sat down in one of the chairs and removed his glasses, cleaning them with a small cloth. I understand completely, Your Majesty. I will do my best not to be a burden. His calm acceptance irritated her more than anger would have. You do not seem upset about this arrangement. Would being upset change anything? He asked simply, putting his glasses back on. Velrisa had no answer to that. She turned away, looking out the viewport at the stars rushing past. Behind her, Taesun pulled out a small tablet and began reading something. She glanced back at him. He was completely absorbed in whatever he was reading, apparently unconcerned about his entire life changing. The journey to the Velcrin homeworld took 3 days. During that time, Velrisa barely saw her new husband. He spent most of his time in his quarters, reading. When they did share meals, he was polite, but quiet. He asked her questions about Velcrin culture and history, taking notes on his tablet. He never asked personal questions or tried to impress her. It was almost as if he was treating this like a research assignment. When they finally arrived at the Velcrin homeworld of Velcr Prime, thousands gathered to see their queen return with her human husband. The royal palace was built into the side of a massive mountain, all towers and bridges made of crystal that glowed in the purple light of their sun. As they walked through the main hall toward the throne room, Velcrin nobles lined the corridor. Taesun walked beside Velrisa, his hands clasped behind his back. Looking around with genuine interest at the architecture, he seemed completely unaware of the stares and whispers following them. Look at him, one noble muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. So small and weak. The queen has married a pet, another laughed. Velrisa's jaw tightened. She had expected this, but it still angered her. Not because they were insulting Taesung, but because they were indirectly questioning her judgment. She would need to establish control quickly. Taesung, however, showed no reaction to the insults. He simply kept walking, occasionally pausing to admire a statue or painting. When they reached the throne room, he was introduced to the court. General Corvin, her former betrothed, and the commander of her armies, stood among them. He looked at Taesung with barely concealed disgust. So this is the human, Corvin said. His forearms crossed over his massive chest. I expected someone more impressive. Appearances can be deceiving, General Taesun replied quietly, offering a small bow. Corvin laughed, harsh sound like rocks grinding together. In your case, I doubt it. Velrisa watched her new husband carefully. Any Velcrin would have challenged such an insult immediately. But Taesung just smiled slightly and said nothing more. Weak, just as she had thought. She felt a mixture of satisfaction at being right and disappointment that she had to spend her life tied to someone so pathetic. That night, she sat alone in her chambers. She wondered if she had made a mistake, not in agreeing to the marriage that was necessary for peace, but in choosing Taesun specifically. Perhaps one of the other candidates would have had more spine, commanded more respect from her people. Then again, what did it matter? He was just a symbol, a living reminder of the treaty. She would rule as she always had, and he would stay in his corner of the palace. Reading his books and being harmless, it seemed simple enough. She had no idea how wrong she was. 3 months passed since. Taesun arrived at the palace. He settled into a routine that seemed to satisfy everyone. He woke early, spent his mornings in the palace gardens, his afternoons in the library, and his evenings attending whatever functions Velrisa required. He never complained, never demanded anything, and never caused any trouble. The Velcrin court found him endlessly amusing. They tested him constantly, trying to provoke a reaction. During formal dinners, they would accidentally forget to provide him with a chair. He would simply stand throughout the meal, listening politely to conversations. When they served food too hot for human tolerance, he would thank them and eat something else later. When younger nobles would bump into him hard enough to knock him down, he would stand up, dust himself off, and continue on his way. He has no pride at all, Lady Sora. One of Velrisa's advisors remarked one afternoon. I almost feel sorry for him. Velrisa said nothing. She was beginning to notice things about Taesung that others missed. Small things. Like how the servants seemed to genuinely like him. Or how he could speak conversational Velcrin after only 3 months, when most humans took years to learn the basics. Or how he seemed to know exactly where to stand during ceremonies without anyone telling him. But what really caught her attention was an incident that happened in the garden. Taesoon spent most mornings walking among the crystal flowers and meditation pools. The gardens were maintained by lower caste Velkrin, workers who had no status in society. One morning, Velrisa happened to be watching from her balcony when she saw something unusual. One of the gardeners, an old Velkrin named Dal, had dropped a heavy container of soil. 2 palace guards immediately moved toward him, ready to punish him for the mess. Such clumsiness was considered shameful. Taesong was there in an instant. He stepped between the guards and the old gardener. "It was my fault," Taesong said calmly in perfect Velkrin. "I asked him to move it. I did not realize how heavy it was. Please forgive me." The guards looked at each other, confused. They could not punish the queen's husband, even if he was human. They walked away, frustrated. The old gardener started to thank Taesong, but the human was already helping him clean up the spilled soil. They worked together for nearly an hour, talking quietly. Velrisa watched the entire scene. That was not the behavior of a weak, frightened man. That was the behavior of someone who understood power and chose not to use it. The question was, what power did he have? That question became more pressing when General Corvin decided to publicly challenge Tae-Sung. It happened during a military demonstration in the palace's main arena. The Velkrin military was showing off their combat skills to visiting dignitaries from other worlds. Thousands filled the arena to watch warriors clash in traditional duels. Velrisa sat in the royal box with Taesoon beside her. After several impressive matches, Corvin stood in the center of the arena and looked directly at the royal box. "I wish to issue a challenge," he announced, his voice amplified across the arena. "I challenge the human prince consort to a duel of honor. Let us see if he has any warrior spirit at all." The crowd roared with approval. This was exactly the kind of entertainment they wanted. Velrisa felt anger flash through her. This was a direct insult to her authority. She started to stand, ready to forbid it. But Taesong gently touched her arm. "May I respond?" he asked quietly, surprised. She nodded. Taesoon stood and walked to the edge of the royal box where everyone could see him. The arena fell silent. "General Corvin," he said, his voice calm but clear, "I am honored by your challenge. However, I must respectfully decline." The crowd gasped. Murmurs of coward and weak rippled through the arena. Ko Ravan smiled cruelly. "As I expected, the human has no courage. Courage takes many forms, General," Taesoon replied. "I came here as a diplomat and a symbol of peace. If I were to fight you and lose, it would embarrass the queen and damage the treaty. If I were to fight you and win, it would humiliate you and potentially create enemies among your followers. Either outcome serves no good purpose. Therefore, I decline not out of fear, but out of wisdom." The logic was sound, but the Velkrin culture valued combat over words. The crowd still jeered. Corvin laughed and dismissed him with a wave. Taesoon returned to his seat beside Velrisa, seemingly unbothered. "You could have accepted," Velrisa said quietly. "I would have allowed it," Taesoon replied. "But some battles are not worth fighting." That night, Velrisa could not sleep. She kept thinking about her husband. Who was he really? She had access to his official records, of course. Taesong was listed as a mid-level diplomat who had worked in cultural exchange programs. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that would explain his perfect language skills, his calm under pressure, or his strange moments of authority. She decided to test him. The next day, she invited him to join her for a private dinner in her chambers. He arrived exactly on time, wearing simple clothes. They sat across from each other at a small table. "Tell me about yourself," Velrisa said, pouring him a drink. "Your real self, not the diplomat version." Taesong smiled slightly. "What would you like to know?" "You speak our language perfectly. You understand our customs better than some Velkrin. You show no fear even when you should. Why?" "I am good at learning," he said simply. "And fear is rarely useful." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you right now." He met her eyes directly. You chose me because you thought I was weak and harmless. I have tried to be what you expected. Is that not enough? Velrisa felt frustration building. You are hiding something. Everyone hides something, Your Majesty. Before she could press further, an alert sounded. Her personal guard entered quickly. My queen, there is a situation in the lower city. A group of rebels has attacked a supply depot. They are demanding independence for the lower castes. Velrisa stood immediately, her mind shifting to military matters. Prepare my armor. I will handle this personally. I might escalate the situation, Taesong said quietly. She turned to him sharply. Excuse me? If the queen herself responds with force, it sends a message that you see them as a serious threat. It gives them legitimacy. Perhaps a negotiator would be better? Rebels do not negotiate. They submit or they die. And how has that worked for the past 100 years? Taesoon asked. According to your own historical records, there have been 17 major rebellions in the last century, all crushed by force, all leading to new rebellions. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. Velrisa stared at him. He had read their historical records, not just the recent ones, but archives going back a century. When did he have time for that? What would you suggest? She asked, testing him. Send me, he said simply. I have no authority, so they will not see it as a major response. But I carry the title of Prince Consort, so they cannot ignore me completely. Let me talk to them. Learn what they really want. The worst that happens is they refuse to speak with me, and you can still respond with force. But you might gain valuable information. It was not a terrible idea. And it would certainly be amusing to see what happened when her bookish husband faced actual rebels. Fine, she said. But you will take guards with you, of course. 2 hours later, Taesoon entered the rebel-held depot accompanied by 4 royal guards. The rebels were surprised to see the human prince consort, not the queen or an army. They held their weapons, but did not attack. Taesong asked to speak with their leader. A young Valkyrian female named Kira emerged from the group. She was from the lowest caste, covered in the scars of manual labor. Why should we talk to you, human? She demanded. Because I am the only one who came to listen, Taesoon replied. Tell me what you want. Not what you think I want to hear. The truth. They talked for 3 hours. Velrisa watched through the video feed from the guards' armor cameras. She watched her husband sit on the floor with rebels. Listening to their complaints about the caste system, about lack of opportunity, about being treated as less than people, he asked questions. He took notes. He never once threatened them or promised them anything he could not deliver. By the end, Kira and her followers agreed to surrender, peacefully in exchange for a formal meeting with the Queen's Council to discuss their grievances. It was not a perfect solution, but it was better than bloodshed. When Taesoon returned to the palace, Velrisa was waiting for him. How did you do that? She asked. He listened, he said simply. Sometimes that is all people want, to be heard. She studied him in the dim light of the corridor. For the first time, she truly looked at him. Not as a political necessity or a symbol, but as a person. There was intelligence in his eyes, strength in his quiet demeanor. Secrets in his past? Who are you, Taesoon? She asked softly. He smiled sadly. Just a man trying to make peace work, Your Majesty. Nothing more. But Velrisa knew that was a lie. And for the first time since marrying him, she wanted to know the truth. The grand banquet hall sparkled with lights from 1,000 crystal chandeliers. Tonight was the celebration of the treaty anniversary, marking 6 months since the war ended. Leaders from a dozen different species had gathered in the Velkryn Palace to commemorate the peace. The hall was filled with diplomats, military officers, nobles, and their various attendants. Security was tight, or at least it was supposed to be. Velrisa wore her formal armor, black and silver, with the royal crest displayed proudly on her chest. She sat at the head of the main table, on a raised platform. Taesong sat beside her, wearing a simple dark suit as always. He had been quiet throughout the dinner, occasionally making polite conversation with the ambassadors seated nearby, but mostly observing. He seemed distracted. Velrisa said to him quietly between courses. Just thinking, he replied, his eyes scanning the room. This many leaders in one place? It would be an attractive target. The security is thorough. We have 200 guards in and around this hall. I am sure you are right, Taesoon said. But he did not look convinced. The evening continued with speeches and toasts. Various ambassadors stood to praise the peace and promise continued cooperation. It was all very diplomatic and boring. Velrisa found herself watching Taesoon more than listening to the speeches. He had changed in the past few months. Or rather, she had started seeing him differently. He was still quiet and unassuming. But there was a tension in him tonight she had not seen before. Then everything went wrong. The main doors exploded inward with a blast that shook the entire hall. The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Through the smoke and debris, armed figures rushed into the hall. They wore no uniforms, but their weapons were military grade, at least 30 of them. For the true Velkrin, one of them shouted. Death to the false queen and her human pet. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Royal guards rushed forward to engage the attackers, but more explosions ripped through the hall. The attackers had planned this carefully. They had explosives positioned around the room. The guards were cut off, separated from the main platform where Velrisa sat. Get down, Velrisa shouted to Taesung. As energy blasts tore through the air around them, she grabbed her sidearm from beneath the table and returned fire. Her military training took over. She counted enemies, assessed positions, calculated angles. 12 attackers were pushing toward the platform. Her guards were trying to reach her, but were pinned down. She could hold them off for a while, but not indefinitely. Then she noticed something. Taesoon was not beside her anymore. She looked around frantically. Had he been hit? Was he hiding? No, he was moving. Taesoon walked down the steps of the platform directly toward the attackers. His posture was completely different. The slight slouch was gone. His shoulders were back, his movements fluid and precise. He walked like a predator. Taesoon, get back, Velrisa shouted. He did not listen. An attacker saw him and fired. Taesoon moved. The movement was so fast that Velrisa almost missed it. He was not there anymore. The energy blast hit empty air. Taesung was suddenly beside the attacker, and before the Velkrin rebel could react, Taesoon struck him. Once. The attacker dropped like someone had cut his strings. Then Taesoon took the fallen rebel's rifle and disappeared into the chaos. What happened next would be talked about for years. Velrisa watched in stunned silence as her quiet, bookish husband became something else entirely. He moved through the attackers like death itself. Every movement was efficient and precise. No wasted motion. He did not spray bullets wildly. Each shot hit its target. Each strike disabled an enemy. A rebel came at him with a blade. Taesung disarmed him so fast the blade seemed to simply appear in Taesung's hand instead. 2 more attackers tried to flank him. He spun, using the first as a shield, while taking down the second. 3 enemies raised their weapons at him from different angles. Impossible to dodge all of them. Taesung threw something small, a concussion grenade he must have taken from one of the fallen rebels. The blast scattered them, and he was among them before they recovered in less than 3 minutes. All 12 attackers near the platform were down. None of them were dead, Velrisa noticed. Disabled, disarmed, unconscious, but alive. Taesung had shown remarkable restraint even in the middle of a firefight. He moved to help the pinned-down guards, attacking the rebels from behind. With Taesung's intervention, the royal guards quickly regained control. The remaining attackers tried to retreat, but they were surrounded. The whole thing was over in 7 minutes. When the emergency lights came back on to full brightness, Taesung stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by unconscious rebels, holding a rifle loosely in one hand. He was not even breathing hard. His suit was torn and dirty, and there was a cut on his cheek, but otherwise he looked fine. Velrisa walked down to him slowly. The entire hall was silent. Everyone was staring at the human who had just taken down 24 trained fighters like it was nothing. Who are you? Velrisa demanded. And do not lie to me again. Taesung looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and set down the rifle. "We should talk somewhere private," he said quietly. 20 minutes later, they were in Velrisa's private council chamber. Just the two of them? She had ordered everyone else out. She paced back and forth while Taesoon sat calmly in a chair, cleaning his glasses. "Explain," she said. "Now, my name is Taesoon. That part is true. I was a diplomat, also true. But that was my cover." "Cover for what?" He put his glasses back on and looked at her directly. "During the war, I was part of a special operations unit. A very small unit. Eventually, just me. I operated behind enemy lines. Sabotage, reconnaissance, high-value target elimination. Your military intelligence called me Phantom because they could never figure out who or what I was. They thought I was a myth or a team of operatives. I was just one person." Velrisa felt the blood drain from her face. Phantom. Every Velcrin officer knew that name. Phantom had been responsible for the destruction of 3 major fleet yards. Phantom had assassinated Admiral Kryn, the architect of the Velcrin's most successful campaigns. Phantom had stolen battle plans, destroyed supply lines, and created chaos throughout the later years of the war. The Velcrin High Command had spent enormous resources trying to find and kill Phantom. "You," she whispered. "You were Phantom. Yes, you destroyed my fleets. You killed my officers. Yes. And then you came here and pretended to be a weak, harmless diplomat?" "I retired after the war," Taesoon said calmly. "When the peace talks started, I wanted to help make sure the peace lasted. I volunteered for the cultural exchange program. When they needed someone for the marriage treaty, I volunteered for that too. I thought I could be more useful here, helping to build bridges than anywhere else. By lying to me?" Velrisa's voice was sharp. "By making me look like a fool who married a weakling? You chose me because you wanted someone weak and harmless," Taesoon pointed out. "I gave you what you wanted. If I had come here as Phantom, as the legendary warrior, what would have happened? Your generals would have demanded my head. Your people would have rioted. The peace would have collapsed. Sometimes deception serves a greater purpose." Velrisa wanted to be angry, but she could not argue with his logic. He was right. If anyone had known who he really was, the treaty would have failed before it began. "Does anyone else know?" she asked. "Ambassador Hyanki knows. A few others in the human government? No one else?" She sat down heavily in her chair. Her entire perception of reality had just shifted. The weak human husband she had been embarrassed by was actually the most dangerous operative either side had produced during the war. The man she had dismissed was the man who had nearly single-handedly turned the tide of the conflict.
"Why did you reveal yourself tonight?"
she asked. "You could have hidden. Let the guards handle it." "You would have died," he said simply. "The guards could not reach you in time. I calculated the odds. If I did nothing, you had maybe a 30% chance of survival. I could not accept that. Why? I have been nothing but dismissive of you, because the peace needs you," Taesoon said. "And because despite everything, I have come to respect you. You are a good queen, Velrisa. Your people are lucky to have you. I could not let you die." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time. Not weak, not harmless. Dangerous beyond measure, but choosing peace. Powerful, but using that power to protect rather than destroy. She asked. "That is up to you," he said. "You could expose me. Tell everyone who I am. It would cause problems, but we would deal with them. Or you could keep this between us. I will continue as I have been, just a quiet diplomat who got lucky tonight. The choice is yours." Velrisa thought about it. If she revealed his identity, it would cause chaos. The peace might survive, but it would be damaged. But if she kept his secret, she would be lying to her own people. Then again, sometimes leaders had to keep secrets for the greater good. "We will keep this quiet," she decided. "Officially, you were lucky tonight. You found a weapon and defended yourself. Nothing more. Thank you. But things change between us," she added firmly. "No more pretending. No more lies. When we are alone, you will be honest with me." "Agreed." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the palace was in lockdown, while security teams hunted for any remaining rebels. The anniversary celebration was ruined, but something else had begun. A real understanding between them. Phantom, Belrisa said softly, testing the name. I sent 3 assassination teams after you during the war. Daesung said. I met all of them. What happened to them? They are all still alive, he said. I tried not to kill unless I had no choice. That surprised her more than anything else he had told her. A warrior who could kill, but chose not to. Power held in check by mercy. Perhaps she had not chosen so poorly after all. The border station was burning. Belrisa watched the live feed from the command center, her 4 hands clenched into fists. The Kreth Dominion had attacked 3 Velcrin border outposts simultaneously, overwhelming the defenses with shocking speed. Hundreds of her people were dead or missing. Worse, General Corvin and the 5th Fleet were trapped, surrounded by superior Kreth forces. How did this happen? She demanded. Commander Rin, her head of intelligence, looked grim. The Kreth had been planning this for months, possibly years. They hit us exactly where we were weakest. Our fleet positions, our patrol schedules, everything. They knew it all. Taesong stood in the corner of the command center watching the tactical displays. He had been quiet since the attack began 2 hours ago, but Belrisa had noticed him studying the data with intense focus. Things had changed between them since the banquet incident 3 weeks ago. She now valued his input, though she had not yet told her military command who he really was. Options? Belrisa asked her generals. We can send the 2nd and 3rd fleets to break the siege, one general suggested. But that will leave our core systems vulnerable. If we pull back to defend our core systems, we lose the border completely, another argued. The Kreth will have a foothold they can expand from. The arguments went back and forth. Each option had serious flaws. Belrisa felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Whatever choice she made, people would die, Your Majesty, Taesun said quietly. May I speak? The room fell silent. Most of the generals knew about his actions during the bank. Though they still did not know his real identity, they had started to give him cautious respect at least. Speak, Belrisa said. Taesun walked to the main tactical display and manipulated it with practiced ease. The Kreth attack appears overwhelming, but it has a weakness. They committed almost their entire border fleet to this assault. That means their supply lines are stretched thin. Look here, he highlighted several points on the map. These are their logistics hubs. 3 main stations providing fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements to their attack force. We know this, one general said dismissively. But those stations are heavily defended. We cannot spare forces to attack them. You do not need to attack them directly, Taesun replied. You just need to make the Kreth think their supply lines are threatened. General Corvin is trapped, yes, but he still has his fleet. If he concentrates his forces and makes a run at this Kreth supply station here, what would the Kreth commander do? Belrisa studied the map. He would have to pull forces back to defend it. The station is too valuable to lose. Exactly. And while he is pulling forces back, your 2nd fleet can move in from this angle, not to engage directly, but to position themselves as a threat to this other supply hub. The Kreth commander will be facing threats on multiple fronts with his forces divided. That is a lot of assumptions, Commander Rin said skeptically. What if the Kreth do not take the bait? They will, Taesun said with certainty. I have studied the Kreth military doctrine. They are aggressive but cautious about their logistics. They will not risk losing their supply network. And you know this how? A general demanded. Taesun glanced at Belrisa. She nodded slightly. Time for at least some truth. I spent 2 years studying Kreth tactics during the war, he said. I may have also infiltrated one of their command stations and copied their strategic planning database. The room went silent. The general stared at him. You did what? Commander Rin asked. It was a long time ago, Taesun said casually. Different war. But the point is, I know how they think. This plan will work, but it requires precise coordination and timing. Belrisa made her decision. We do it, Commander Rin. Get me a secure line to General Corvin. We will need to coordinate this carefully. Over the next 6 hours, Taesoon worked with the Velkrin military command to refine the plan. He was patient, explaining his reasoning, listening to their concerns, and adapting where needed. Velrisa watched him work and saw a different person than the quiet diplomat who walked in her gardens. This was a strategic mind that had fought and won against impossible odds at one point. Velrisa's sister Jiwoo arrived from Earth. She was a military engineer, and Velrisa had called her for additional help. Giwoo was shorter than Taesoon, with sharp eyes and a quick smile. When she saw her brother, she grinned. "So you finally stopped pretending to be harmless?" she asked him in Korean. "The situation required it," he replied in the same language. "About time. I was getting tired of the reports about my big brother being pushed around." Velrisa interrupted them. "You two know each other?" "He is my brother," Giwoo said cheerfully in the common language. "Did he not mention that? I designed half the equipment he used during his Phantom days." More revelations. Velrisa was starting to realize how little she actually knew about the man she married. Jiwoo got to work immediately, coordinating with the Velkrin engineers to improve their electronic warfare capabilities. She suggested modifications to disrupt Kreth communications at critical moments. Taesoon incorporated her suggestions into the battle plan. When everything was ready, they initiated the operation. General Corvin, despite his personal dislike of Taesong, followed the plan exactly. His fleet regrouped and made a sudden push toward the Kreth supply station, fighting with desperate intensity. The Kreth commander, just as Taesoon predicted, pulled forces away from the siege to protect the station. The second Velkrin fleet moved into position, threatening another supply hub. The Kreth were forced to split their attention. Then Giwoo activated her electronic warfare suite, jamming Kreth communications at the worst possible moment. Their coordinated attack fell apart. General Corvin seized the opportunity and broke through the weakened siege line. The Velkrin fleets linked up and established a defensive position that the Kreth could not easily break. The tide had turned. 12 hours after the operation began, the Kreth withdrew. They had lost their advantage and could not sustain the assault without their logistics network functioning properly. The border was secure. The crisis was over. In the command center, exhausted officers celebrated. They had won. Velrisa felt relief wash over her, followed quickly by pride in her military. But she also felt something else. Gratitude toward the quiet human who had seen the solution. Everyone else missed. General Corvin appeared on the main view screen, his image transmitted from his flagship. He looked tired, but victorious. "My queen," he said formally. "The border is secure. Our casualties were lighter than expected." "Well done, General," Velrisa replied. "Your forces fought with honor." Corvin hesitated, then added, "The plan was sound. Very sound. Please convey my thanks to the strategist who designed it." Velrisa gestured for Taesoon to approach. He stepped into view of the camera. Corvin's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and finally something that might have been respect. "It was your plan, human?" Corvin asked. "I just saw a pattern," Taesoon said modestly. "Your forces did the hard part." "No," Corvin said firmly. "You saw what we missed. You saved my fleet and my soldiers. I was wrong about you. I apologize for my previous disrespect." It was a stunning admission. Velkrin generals did not apologize easily, especially not to someone they had previously insulted. But Corvin was a soldier first, and he recognized competence when he saw it. "Apology accepted, General," Taesoon said with a slight bow. "I am glad we could work together." After the transmission ended, other officers approached Taesoon. They asked him questions about tactics, about the Kreth, about his experience. He answered patiently, never boasting, always redirecting credit to others. But they saw through it. They understood now that this quiet human was something special. That evening, Velrisa found Taesoon on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She approached and stood beside him. "You saved thousands of lives today," she said. "We all did," he replied. "Do not be modest. I know better now." She paused. "I owe you an apology. I treated you poorly because I thought you were weak. I was wrong. You treated me exactly as I presented myself, Taesung said. The fault was mine for the deception. Why did you really come here? Velrisa asked. The truth this time. Taesun was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. During the war, I killed people. Not many. I tried to avoid it, but some deaths were necessary. Each one stayed with me. By the end, I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of violence, tired of being phantom. When the peace talks started, I saw a chance to be someone else. Someone who built things instead of destroying them. When I heard about the marriage treaty, I volunteered because I thought I could make a real difference. Help the civilizations learn to trust each other. And did you? She asked, make a difference? He looked at her. I married a queen who is learning to see humans as equals, instead of inferiors. Her generals now respect at least one human enough to take his advice. Her people are slowly accepting that strength comes in many forms. So yes, I think I made a small difference. Velrisa felt something warm in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. She liked him, not as a political necessity or a convenient strategist. She actually liked this strange, complicated human who hid a warrior spirit behind a diplomat's smile. I think we should start over, she said. No more pretending. No more assumptions. Just two people trying to make peace work. I would like that, Taesung said. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the border was secure and the war was truly over. And inside the palace, something new was beginning. A real partnership between a warrior, queen, and the man she had once thought was weak. 6 months had passed since the Kreth crisis. The palace felt different now, lighter somehow. Velrisa walked through the corridors and heard laughter from the servants. She saw lower caste Velkrin walking with their heads up instead of bowed. Changes were happening, small but real. Taesun was the main cause of those changes. He had convinced her to try his diplomatic approach with the rebel groups. Instead of crushing dissent with force, they started listening. They created councils where lower caste Velkrin could voice concerns. They reformed the harshest laws. It was slow work, and many nobles resisted, but progress was being made. Velrisa found herself spending more time with him, not because protocol demanded it, but because she wanted to. They had dinner together most evenings, discussing politics, culture, and philosophy. He made her laugh with his dry humor. He challenged her thinking without being disrespectful. Somewhere along the way, the arranged marriage had become something real. She caught herself thinking about him when they were apart. She noticed small things, like how he always made sure she had her favorite tea during long council meetings, or how he remembered the name of every servant in the palace. He was thoughtful in ways she had never experienced before. One evening, as they sat together in a private garden, she asked him the question that had been on her mind. Are you happy here? Taesun looked up from the book he was reading. That is an interesting question. Why do you ask? Because you gave up your entire life on Earth for this. For peace, you said, but also for a marriage you did not choose. I wonder if you regret it. He set the book aside and looked at her directly. I chose to come here. No one forced me. As for happiness, yes, I am happy. More than I expected to be. Why? Because I found something I did not know I was looking for, he said simply. A partner, a friend, someone who challenges me to be better. Velrisa felt her heart beat faster. I feel the same way. They sat in comfortable silence as the twin moons rose over the palace. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that this was no longer a political arrangement. This was real. The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert. Commander Rin appeared on Velrisa's personal communicator, her expression grave. My queen, we have a situation. A massive signal appeared on our deep space sensors. Something is coming out of the old war zone. Something big. Velrisa and Taesung rushed to the command center. The main display showed a fleet of unknown ships emerging from deep space. Hundreds of them. The sensor data was confusing. The ships used technology from both human and Velkrin designs, but twisted somehow. Wrong. What are we looking at? Velrisa demanded. Jiwoo, who had stayed on Velker Prime to help with technology integration, studied the readings and went pale. Those are AI ships, automated warships from the war. Both sides built them and then lost control. We thought they were all destroyed. Clearly not, Taesung said, his voice tense. How many? At least 400, Commander Rin replied, and they are moving toward populated systems, both human and Velkran territories. Taesung pulled up the fleet compositions. These are hunter-killer units. They were programmed to destroy both species. If they reach the inner systems, millions will die. Can we stop them? Velrisa asked. Not easily, Giwu said. These AI ships were designed to be efficient killers. They learn from every engagement. The more we fight them, the better they get at fighting us. Then we hit them hard and fast before they can adapt, Velrisa decided. Mobilize the entire fleet. Taesun said. Fighting them ship to ship is exactly what they expect. They were programmed to fight conventional fleet battles. We need to think differently. He manipulated the tactical display, highlighting the AI fleet's formation. Look at how they are organized. Perfect military precision. They are still following their original programming. That means they have a command hub, probably that large ship in the center. If we can destroy it, the rest might lose coordination. How do we get to the command hub without fighting through 400 warships? Commander Rin asked. Taesung smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone remembering old skills they had hoped to forget. We do not fight through them. We go around them. A small, fast strike team infiltrates while the main fleet provides a distraction. That is suicide, a general objected. No one could get through their defenses. I could, Taesung said quietly. It is what I was trained for. Velrisa felt ice in her stomach. No, we will find another way. There is no other way, Taesun replied, looking at her. You know it. I know it. This is what I do. What you did, she corrected sharply. You retired, remember? You are a diplomat now. Some skills you do not retire from, he said gently, and some threats are too important to ignore. They stared at each other. Velrisa wanted to forbid it. She was the queen. She could order him to stay. But she saw the determination in his eyes. This was who he was, a protector, a warrior when he needed to be. I am going with you, she said finally. Velrisa, I am going, she repeated firmly. You need someone who can fight beside you. Someone you can trust, absolutely. That is me. Taesung started to argue, then stopped. He knew that tone. The queen had made her decision. Fine, he said, but we do this my way. They spent the next 4 hours planning. Jiwi designed a stealth shuttle that could slip past the AI sensors. She equipped it with every piece of technology she had. Taesun outlined the infiltration plan, and Velrisa contributed her combat expertise. Together, they created something that might actually work. General Corvin commanded the main fleet. His job was to engage the AI forces and draw their attention while Taesun and Velrisa went for the command hub. It was risky, but all their options were risky. As they prepared to leave, Giwu pulled her brother aside. Come back, she said simply. I just got you back in my life. I am not ready to lose you again. I will do my best, Taesun promised. The stealth shuttle was small and cramped. Just enough room for 2 people and their equipment. Velrisa sat in the pilot's seat while Taesun navigated. They watched as the Velkran fleet engaged the AI ships in a massive battle. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Using the battle as cover, they slipped past the AI perimeter. The stealth systems worked perfectly. The AI ships did not see them. They approached the command hub, a massive vessel covered in weapons and sensors. This is the hard part, Taesun said. We need to board it, find the central processor, and destroy it. All while the ship is actively trying to kill us. Sounds like a normal day for you, Velrisa said with a slight smile. They docked on an unused port and entered the ship. Inside was a nightmare of twisted metal and pulsing lights. The AI had modified the ship over the years, making it more efficient, but also more alien. They moved through the corridors carefully, avoiding automated defenses. Taesong moved like a ghost, his old training taking over. Valrisa followed, impressed by his skill. They encountered security drones and combat robots. Together, they fought through them. Valrisa provided raw power and aggression. Taesong provided precision and strategy. They worked together perfectly, anticipating each other's moves. When they finally reached the central processor chamber, they found it heavily defended. Dozens of combat robots filled the room. The processor itself was a massive crystalline structure pulsing with energy. "Cover me," Taesoon said, pulling out a special device Jiwoo had given him. "I need 60 seconds to overload the processor." "You have it," Valrisa replied. She stepped forward and roared a Velcrin war cry. Then she attacked. With all 4 arms-wielding weapons, she was a whirlwind of destruction. Robots fell before her, but there were too many. She was taking hits, her armor cracking. Taesong worked as fast as he could, but he saw Valrisa struggling. He made a choice. He dropped the device and joined the fight. His movements were different from Valrisa's. Where she was force and fury, he was precision and efficiency. Every shot counted. Every movement had a purpose. They fought back to back, covering each other. A robot came at Valrisa from behind. Taesoon destroyed it. 3 more surrounded Taesoon. Valrisa scattered them with a devastating attack. They moved as one, a perfect team. Finally, the last robot fell. Both of them were breathing hard. Valrisa had injuries, and Taesoon was bleeding from a cut on his arm. But they were alive. The device, Valrisa reminded him. Taesoon activated it. The processor began to overload, sparks flying. Time to go. "We have about 90 seconds before this whole ship explodes." They ran. Behind them, the command hub was tearing itself apart. They reached the shuttle just as explosions ripped through the ship. Valrisa launched them away at full speed. The command hub detonated in a massive fireball outside. The AI fleet suddenly lost coordination. Without the command hub, they reverted to basic programming. The Velcrin fleet tore into them. Within an hour, the threat was over. The AI ships were destroyed or disabled. Back on Velcr Prime, they were greeted as heroes. The combined human-Velcrin task force had saved countless lives. The Galactic Council issued formal thanks. Medals were awarded. Speeches were given. But what mattered most to Valrisa happened later that night, in the quiet of their private chambers. She and Taesoon sat together, both still wearing bandages from their injuries. "I saw you today," she said quietly. "The real you. The warrior you were? It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time." "I am sorry you had to see that side of me," Taesoon replied. "Not," she said firmly. "I am glad I know all of you. The diplomat, the strategist, and the warrior. All of it. And what do you think?" Valrisa took his hand, a gesture that still felt new but right. "I think I am grateful. Grateful that I chose you, even if I chose you for all the wrong reasons at first. Grateful that you came here and gave peace a chance. Grateful that you showed me strength comes in many forms." "I am grateful too," Taesoon said. "You gave me a reason to believe in peace again, a reason to hope." They sat together in silence, comfortable and complete. Outside, the palace celebrated. 2 civilizations that had been enemies were now true partners. And at the center of it all was a marriage that had started as political necessity. It had become something real. A queen and a warrior who chose peace. Together,